It's rumored that Lucrezia was in a relationship with her brother Cesare. But according to her husband, the truth was even darker. Seductress, schemer, poisoner, such words and worse have been used to describe Lucrezia Borgia, one of the scandalous children of Pope Alexander VI. Though Lucrezia is known as a Renaissance femme fatale, when we cut through the rumors and myths, the truth is much more complicated. This is the incredible story of Lucrezia Borgia. Lucrezia Borgia entered the world on April 18, 1480. At the time, her father was Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia, not yet Pope Alexander VI. Sure, men of the cloth were technically supposed to be celibate, but that hardly stopped Rodrigo from fathering multiple children with Lucrezia's mother, along with several other women. There are plenty of rumors about Lucrezia Borgia's femme fatale cred, but few are as wicked as this one. According to lore, Lucrezia's favorite piece of jewelry was a special ring. It looked like a normal piece of jewelry until you realized that it contained a hollow cavity. Apparently, Lucrezia would use it to poison her enemies' drinks. Lucrezia was considered a great beauty, but she would learn that beauty could be a double-edged sword. At the age of 13, Lucrezia made it down the aisle after 2 failed engagements. The groom was Giovanni Sforza. The couple wed on June 12, 1493. Lucrezia's husband was 14 years older than her. The 13-year-old Lucrezia found little in common with her 27-year-old first husband, Giovanni Sforza. After just 4 years of mutual unhappiness, the mismatched couple would accuse each other of misconduct, also known as the Renaissance equivalent of irreconcilable differences. Of course, this disharmony was politically convenient to the Borgias. Not long after Lucrezia's marriage, Borgia's need for an alliance with the Sforza family expired. With Lucrezia's family and the Sforzas on opposite sides of a huge conflict with the King of France, it was only a matter of time before the couple headed towards a scandalous annulment. Lucrezia was quickly making a name for herself as Italy's new troublemaker. In a shocking turn of events, the Borgias planned to kill their useless son-in-law, and they would have if it hadn't been for that meddling Lucrezia. Apparently, she got wind of her family's plot and warned Sforza to get out of Rome. But in another version of the story, Lucrezia doesn't want to save her husband. She actively plots with her family to take care of him. After his bride's family literally threatened to kill him, Sforza suddenly thought an annulment seemed like a pretty good idea. He just had one condition. He wanted to keep Lucrezia's dowry. That worked well enough for the Borgias. They negotiated that Giovanni Sforza had to sign a contract saying that the marriage was never consummated because he was impotent. After the marriage ended, Lucrezia rushed herself to a convent and tried to enjoy some peace and quiet. Of course, her hasty retreat only fueled more rumors. Soon enough, there would be an even bigger scandal. She received some concerning news. At first, it seemed like her brother Giovanni had just gone missing, but after a week or two, it turned out he was never coming home. When her brother's corpse washed up on the shores of the Tiber River, it was easy to see that his demise was not due to natural causes. Giovanni had been stabbed multiple times. The Borgias were justifiably distraught by their loss, but here's the worst part. Some believe that Lucrezia's ex-husband arranged for the brutal attack. If the Borgias hadn't humiliated him in that impotency clause, maybe Lucrezia's brother would still be alive. In between the breakdown of her marriage, her trip to the nunnery, and her brother's violent demise, Lucrezia somehow found time for another scandal. The appearance of a secret baby. In 1498, a mysterious baby entered the Borgia family. But here's the thing, no one would say which Borgia it belonged to. The Borgia baby's parentage stoked a huge debate in Rome, with the shocking possibilities playing out as follows. The baby was Lucrezia's secret child with her now ex-husband Giovanni Sforza. Lucrezia had the baby with her own brother Cesare, or it was Lucrezia's baby with her dad, the Pope. These days, historians don't put much faith in any of these options, but there's one other explanation that seems more plausible. During Lucrezia's annulment proceedings with her ex-Sforza, Italian nobles accused Lucrezia of having an affair with her father's chamberlain, Perotto Calderon, and the evidence confirming this possible parentage is scandalous. Remember how Lucrezia skipped town and entered a convent? Well, soon after Lucrezia settled into the nunnery, the body of her alleged lover Perotto was found in the Tiber River along with a chambermaid. Many believed that the Borgias had Perotto and the maid killed in order to tie up loose ends. And so, in March 1498, a boy of uncertain parentage entered the Borgia household. The child was named Giovanni, but is often mysteriously referred to as the Roman child. Pope Alexander issued not one, but two contradictory papal bills about his parentage. One said the boy was the illegitimate offspring of Lucrezia's older brother Cesare, but then the Pope changed his story and said that the secret love child was his own natural son. Whatever the truth, Lucrezia raised the Roman child as a close companion and referred to him as her beloved half-brother. Lucrezia didn't waste time being single. Barely a year after splitting up with Sforza, she walked down the aisle with another Italian hotshot. This time, the lucky groom was Alfonso of Aragon, the illegitimate son of the King of Naples. Unlike Lucrezia's first marriage, this couple was much closer in age and even had a son, Rodrigo. At first, things went well between Lucrezia and husband number 2. Alfonso was a noted hottie, with the teenage couple seeming to like each other very much. Unfortunately, Lucrezia's second marriage was also headed towards trouble fast. Lucrezia's father, Pope Alexander, decided to team up with France, who just so happened to be the enemy of Lucrezia's new in-laws. He betrayed his new son-in-law, Alfonso, by plotting to invade Naples with France by his side. Terrified of his violent father-in-law, the 17-year-old Alfonso decided to skip down and lay low. He ran away from Rome, leading Pope Alexander to send his men to track Alfonso down. Despite weeks of hunting, they just couldn't find him, leading the furious Pope to distract himself by indulging in some very unholy activities. Alexander used his son-in-law's absence as an excuse to give his daughter Lucrezia a fancy promotion. She became the governor of Spoleto, and in addition to the official chores she performed, Lucrezia also did some more scandalous work. According to the gossip mill, while Lucrezia was trying to cope with her crumbling marriage, Alexander tasked her with the daughterly duty of managing his bedroom escapades. Eventually, the Pope discovered secret letters from Alfonso to Lucrezia. Realizing that he now had a way to communicate with Alfonso, Pope Alexander immediately forced his daughter into luring her beloved husband back. Alfonso eventually returned to Rome, and even better, Alexander decided not to punish Alfonso for running away. But the peace was sadly short-lived. Lucrezia's brother Cesare accused Alfonso of trying to kill him with a crossbow. Most people don't believe Cesare's claim, and in any other family, I'd have my doubts too. But when it comes to the Borgia clan, anything goes, as you will see. On a hot summer night in July of 1500, Alfonso climbed the steps that led to the Vatican. At the top, he encountered a group of cloaked men who viciously stabbed him all over his body. As Alfonso fell to the ground, the assassins tried to capture him, only for our own men to whisk him away to a nearby place. Lucrezia felt certain that the attempt on Alfonso's life would be repeated. To keep her husband safe, she personally made all of his meals to make sure no one could poison him. She also refused to let anyone see him except for his sister and doctor. As Alfonso began to recover, the couple thought that they just might get out of this mess. Unfortunately, they were very wrong. One night, a group of warriors snuck into Alfonso's chambers where they proceeded to strangle the already weak man. After this attack, Alfonso died. He was only 19 years old. For centuries, people have argued over who ordered the hit on Alfonso. From the rival Orsini family to Alfonso's own nefarious uncle, historians have produced plenty of suspects. But there's fairly compelling evidence that points to one specific person, Cesare Borgia, the brother of Lucrezia. Not only was he allied with Alfonso's enemies, the French, he and Alfonso's main assassin were old chums. According to lore, Cesare Borgia set up both attacks on Alfonso of Aragon, and he wasn't shy about taking the credit for the vicious actions. Apparently, after the first attempt on the steps of the Vatican failed, Cesare came up to Alfonso and whispered what didn't happen at lunch could still happen at dinner. When word got out about Alfonso's brutal fate, the Roman people immediately began gossiping about the drama behind his demise. Thanks to rumors spread by Lucrezia's early ex-husband Sforza, people believed in the most scandalous possible option. Cesare had killed Alfonso because he was insanely jealous that he got to marry his sister. To make things worse, people also believed that Lucrezia helped plan the attack. In reality, Lucrezia was utterly devastated by the loss of her second husband. When she signed letters as a widow, she even changed her name, calling herself the most unhappy princess of Salerno. Barely 2 years after her second husband kicked the bucket, Lucrezia's dad made her marry yet another Alfonso. Alfonso d'Este, the Duke of Ferrara. For her part, Lucrezia was not interested in tying the knot again. When her father brought up the idea of a new marriage, Lucrezia shut him down, bitterly saying that her husband's had a record of being very unlucky. Lucrezia's future father-in-law was, understandably, also hesitant to wed his heir to Rome's most scandalous widow, initially. After all, Lucrezia's 2 previous marriages had ended in a declaration of impotence and murder. The Duke's reluctance led Pope Alexander to take matters into his own hands. Alexander implied that the d'Este family might just lose their lands. He sweetened the deal with a large dowry and a cushy church job for his new son-in-law. Oh, and he also made the literal King of France write to the Duke and tell him to do what the Pope said. Unsurprisingly, the couple married in 1502. The marriage between Lucrezia and Alfonso d'Este was very successful and allegedly had a steamy beginning. According to one account, on their wedding night, they did the deed 3 times. How do we know this? Apparently, Lucrezia's nosy sister-in-law Isabella hired a spy to watch the newlyweds. The Renaissance really was a very different time. Lucrezia seemed to really love her third husband, but in order to marry him, she had to make a huge sacrifice. Before walking down the aisle, Lucrezia had to declare herself a virgin. But wait, didn't she already have a kid with her second husband? That is correct. Lucrezia had to give up custody of her beloved toddler Rodrigo. She made multiple attempts to regain custody of her child, but they all came to naught. Mother and son never saw each other again. Then the boy contracted a fatal illness in 1512. He was just 12 years old. The loss was a terrible one for Lucrezia. But as she was seen as the bad girl of the Renaissance, people would use her giving up Rodrigo as proof that she had an ice-cold heart. Lucrezia and her new husband had 8 children of their own, and Lucrezia got to do more than answer her dad's mail and organize his debauched parties. Instead, she now ran an impressive court at her husband's palace. Lucrezia dove into her new role as the Duchess of Ferrara. By focusing on poetry and painting, she made a mid-career switch from scandalous widow to patroness of the arts. Ironically, for a woman with such a reputation for beauty and love for the arts, there is no definitive surviving portrait of Lucrezia Borgia. Even so, she is reported to have had one particular beautiful feature. Her thick locks of strawberry blonde hair were so long that they reached past her knees. It's no surprise that men couldn't resist her, even when some of them should have stayed far, far away. Lucrezia was quite the bad girl in her third marriage. Historians speculate that she enjoyed an extramarital affair with her own brother-in-law, Francesco II Gonzaga. The romance probably began in 1503, and some think it continued until Francesco unfortunately contracted syphilis. Not too romantic an ending to this affair. In any case, Lucrezia seemed to have been flagrantly thirsty for her not-so-secret boyfriend. In a stunning move, she even named one of her children Francesco, suggesting that her actual husband maybe wasn't the baby's real father. During her third marriage, Lucrezia took great pains to befriend her husband's sister, Isabella d'Este. You know, the one who spied on Lucrezia during her wedding night? The two ladies had a lot in common as intellectual patronesses of the Renaissance, but alas, their friendship was not to be. Isabella coldly snubbed Lucrezia's overtures, feeling that she was her rival. Lucrezia responded with a ruthless betrayal. She slept with Isabella's husband, of course. But wait, wasn't this third marriage supposed to be a good one? If that's the case, why was Lucrezia having all these affairs? Here's the thing. Lucrezia and Alfonso d'Este's marriage worked despite her third husband's intense weirdness. When Alfonso got bored, he didn't do a puzzle or read a book. No, he'd either go to his personal cannon-making factory or walk around town in his birthday suit while holding two things: his sword and his manhood. Those affairs might make a little more sense now, right? But Lucrezia did a lot more than have affairs. In addition to funding the arts, she also had an entrepreneurial streak. She shrewdly invested her cash in marshes so lands could be drained and converted into farmlands. She then reinvested the wealth back into convents and hospitals. In 1503, Lucrezia's father Alexander died. Then, in 1505, her brother Cesare was kidnapped and sent to prison, only to escape the next year and die in battle. Lucrezia was, in fact, the last Borgia standing. This poor girl buried both her parents and all of her siblings. To this day, people are convinced that Lucrezia and her brother Cesare were closer than siblings should be, but the person who first made this claim actually went way further. Remember Lucrezia's first husband Giovanni Sforza and how her family made him say that he couldn't perform in the sack? Before he said goodbye to his ex-wife's family, he gave them one final parting gift. He said that Pope Alexander broke up him and Lucrezia so that he could, and I quote, have the freedom to enjoy himself with his own daughter. Obviously, Giovanni Sforza was still pretty angry about that whole impotence claim. Lucrezia had an absolutely brutal time when it came to childbirth. Tragically, only 4 of her children managed to make it to adulthood. The other 5 passed away in infancy or childhood. In 1519, Lucrezia gave birth to her final child. The baby was a premature girl named Isabella, and sadly she died on the same day after an absolutely brutal birth. Lucrezia herself would die from postnatal complications 10 days later on June 24, 1519. She was just 39 years old. Lucrezia Borgia is still infamous for her beauty and the many insane rumors about her life. She was a woman who successfully navigated the dangerous world of Renaissance politics. In fact, far from being just a pawn in her family's schemes against all odds, Lucrezia somehow managed to hold influence in her own right. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe.